Today on the Embodied Divinity Podcast, I had the honor of interviewing Rebecca Joelle as we had a powerful discussion on learning to trust your intuition and stepping into your full empowered nature. Rebecca is an international oracle, healer, spiritual mentor, and medium with a unique focus on empowering women. Through her transformative mentorship, she helps women reclaim their inherent value, cultivating self respect and self worth, and fostering a deep sense of self love that illuminates their path. She guides them through awakening their inner compass, achieving business success, harmonizing feminine and masculine energies, healing health issues, and helping them to navigate life's journey with confidence and purpose. Where healing meets empowerment and magic becomes a way of life. Rebecca Joelle stands as a catalyst for profound change, weaving her magic to uplift women around the globe. You can find links to work with and follow Rebecca below this episode. I hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Embodied Divinity. I just told you all about this beautiful woman, Rebecca Joelle, sitting in front of me. Thank you, Rebecca, for joining us for this week's episode.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be so fun today. So, of course, I have to start you off with the signature question. How did you become the woman sitting in front of us today?
Well, to keep it brief, I found myself on this journey of being actually in an abusive marriage in all the ways possible that you can think: abuse, mental, emotional, physical, verbal, spiritual. But I came out of that, and my experience from that journey is going through this huge awakening and coming back to knowing who I am, awakening my intuition, Kundalini awakening, spiritual awakening, going from not knowing how, feeling blocked to my intuition, to now working with people in 22 countries, being able to do readings, being able to do healings, on top of having, the blessing of being able to know my own personal intuition. So of course there was a lot of healing that had to happen, a lot of layers that had to be peeled back in order for me to get to that point. But that's been my journey. And so now I work with women all over the world, helping them to awaken their intuition and heal their inner child and heal their relationships so that they can magnetize the partner that they want to, their dream partner, their dream life, whatever they want. So yeah, it's been quite the journey getting here, fleeing with two little kids in tow. But now it's like, wow, what a journey it's been, to come back home to myself and reclaim my true divine self, my own inner knowing.
Mm, what a powerful journey. I have found, like, through the hundreds of recorded interviews that I've done on the show, I can say every single woman that has become some sort of empowerment coach, mentor, oracle, healer has had their catalyst be a deep trauma or abusive relationship. And I find it so interesting the way that we rebuild ourselves, and the way oftentimes that those moments of just like darkness, despair, and deep pain lead us into this place of empowerment. How would you say that experience shaped your healing journey?
Well, I look at this from a higher perspective, to be honest, which is difficult because that, abusive person is still in my life, and I got to split time with my kids with that person. But I still try to look at it from a higher perspective because my own personal beliefs and what I see with my third eye is that these are agreements that we made with these people before we even came into this life, and they were made out of love, and they were made to reformulate us, to help us to grow, to help us to evolve, to help us to pick up these little, gems along the road that we put into our purse or bag or suitcase or whatever. And so that's what I come to realize, is that these challenging connections are oftentimes rearranged or prearranged, before we even incarnate. So I feel like this journey, although has been extraordinarily challenging, and I went from feeling blocked to my intuition, and I didn't even realize that I was actually feeling anxiety pretty much nonstop.
Right.
Um, Low self-worth, which was mirrored back to me when I entered the dating world, which I didn't realize at the time. You know, we want to point the finger outward, but then it's like, well, wait a second, how is that reflecting back on me? I wouldn't be with this person who's breadcrumbing me if I didn't tolerate it and if I truly loved myself, right? So it's been eye-opening to go from this is happening outside of me to how can I change things internally, and then your external world reflects back those changes, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And we share the same beliefs as far as like, you know, having these contracts, if you call them that, that were formed in love, and also being an empowerment mentor, being trauma trained. What I realized is it's really hard, and it was so hard for me, 13 years ago when I walked away from a similar situation, to hear that from people, that you in some life chose this, that you created this. So how do we find the balance between the two things you're talking to? Number one, seeing it from that higher perspective while still honoring that we were deeply hurt and abused. And number two, the part where you are seeing these behaviors as you're entering the dating scene or wherever you're at on your journey, and you're seeing these behaviors like being susceptible to the breadcrumbs and to the false love and the manipulation, and coming back to yourself without like berating or shaming yourself. How do we find that balance, would you say?
I think it just comes, I mean, it sounds so simple and cliche, but it really comes back to self-love, you know, and that's been the journey in essence this whole time for me, you know, and for many women who become more empowered, who have this divine feminine awakening, is that they come back to self-love. And that's not all love and light. You know, our lives are not love and light. You know, we've got to embrace the shadow. We've got to embrace the dark feminine, which that was an initiation for me. Lilith, you know, coming into my life when I had to stand in court and be on the receiving end of patriarchal injustice, you know, and the oppression of women. Like that just wasn't in my consciousness before that point, you know, but that stirred something up inside of me that was very empowering. And so now when I have other women come towards me, it's really whittled down to this simple, you know, concept of self love. And once you have that and you embody it, then your life is just very different. You know, I love to go into the dating world just to see how I'm growing and have that reflected back to me because I find it so fascinating. And the last time I went on the dating apps, there was all these men who just wanted to, well, one, they were leading, you know, there was no wishy-washy energy. It was very masculine and direct, and which feels safer, right, to the feminine, people who identify with being female. And I could receive more, you know, I could be more in that receiving state. Whereas like if you're in the dating world and you're chasing after a man and you're when am I going to see you next, or you know, and you're planning your wedding after the third date, you know, it's like it's you the whole lesson there is to come back to self-love, because you're outsourcing your own worth to someone else that you just met, you know. So and it's not so obvious, you know, but if we get hit over the head by the spiritual 2x4 a few times, we eventually wake up to, oh, okay, this is me being reflected back, and these are the things I need to do to fully come back into my own power, you know.
I love that insight and the awareness of really just coming back to yourself again and again. So obviously this episode's going to attract women that are in that place right now, or even men that have gone through this energy. So as they're listening, as they're tuning in, as they are in that place of that discovery, maybe they have the awareness. What would you say these first crucial like baby steps they should take to be able to dive more into the self-love, into the confidence, and even the awareness of the patterns showing up?
What's coming through right now is honoring your feelings,
Mhm.
because we're in this really busy, chaotic society, you know, and we're constantly being distracted and whether it's Netflix or scrolling and on the dating apps or Netflix or whatever. There's just a busyness in the modern day culture that we live in. And there's also, at least here in America, I feel like we're coming around to a different new paradigm, new perspective. But we have been kind of indoctrinated into this culture where it's not acceptable to express our feelings in public. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't ever see people crying like in public, you know? And and if you do, a lot of people, if they see someone crying, they're uncomfortable, you know, because they haven't embraced their own emotions. And so I feel like that's such a simple thing. It's like, I mean, for me, for example, like I felt uncomfortable crying in front of anyone, especially my kids. And as a single mom, you know, I had to have it together. You know, I had to be strong. I didn't, and when my kids would leave, then I would feel comfortable enough to cry. But there's a price we pay for that, right? When we suppress our emotions over time. That's what I see with clients. Like they'll come to me with a physical illness. And it started at 8 years old when some kid was making fun of them and they never processed that, never felt their emotions around that, you know? And of course, this can all happen in relationships, but I think honoring your feelings and letting your feelings flow and not judging them. And that also has the added bonus of allowing you to be more in your intuitive awareness, intuitive body, right? Is like honoring your feelings, because I've experienced that's so connected to our higher self, our channel to source, creator, universe, God, whatever word people want to use. But your feelings and honoring those feelings is so connected to the access that we all want to our intuition.
Mm, yeah. That, I mean, can you imagine a society where we could just freely express in all moments? I used to literally just go to the cemetery to cry because it was the one place, number one, I felt could hold my grief, but number two, I could just wail. And if people saw me, they wouldn't project all their weirdness on me because I was at a cemetery. And so it's just so interesting the way that our society has been set up. But I mean, emotions they're here to teach us, to guide us. How did you get more comfortable being in your authentic elements?
I think it happened with my spiritual awakening. I mean, I started to have prophetic dreams again, and I would just have intuitive knowings about people. And I had them my whole life, but I was surrounded by people who second guessed my intuition, you
Mm.
know, which I would say out there, if you're around people who are constantly telling you, well, I don't know, maybe he's just busy, or I don't know, like I don't agree. You know, I don't think you're seeing it the right way. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. You know, like I was surrounded by people my whole life who second guessed my intuition. And now that doesn't happen, or they're just not in my circle, you know? Um, so yeah, that's what I would say about that.
It's so interesting you bring that up. I personally had an experience with my ex-husband where like I had this knowing in my body. I knew that he was doing just crappy things behind my back. And my best friend at the time was a healer, and she like used her pendulum to tell me that it wasn't actually what was going on, and it really messed me up spiritually, emotionally. It took me 8 years to start to trust my own intuitive thoughts again. And I know that happens with so many people, whether it's their parents gaslighting them, a friend, a relationship. So I'd love for you to speak on what it feels like, what that feeling feels like for you. I know it's going to be a little different for all of us, but what did it feel like in your body to have those intuitive hits? And what does it feel like now?
I would say about that situation that you're talking about, she was trying to reassure you, you know, and she was up in her head thinking that she knew right, but she wanted to say the right thing. And I think we do surround ourselves, especially women, you know, we don't realize that we're trying to make our friend feel better, but we're saying the opposite of what their intuition is telling them instead of being supportive. So, you know, the pandemic was great for eliminating people in my life that just weren't aligned. And so I had to be in isolation. I feel like that's the dark night of the soul in order to have that protective cocoon, in order to develop my intuition. So before, I will say that like when my ex-husband proposed to me, go back to that day and how I felt in that moment. And there was a contraction.
Mm.
And I know you're familiar with human design, and I'm a generator. And so now, and that's also one thing that was the starting point for me expanding on my intuition, was embodying my human design. And what I have sacral authority, which is my gut, like my gut, and I've seen this for so many women, just went numb. It was not, I was living with a numb sacral for most of my life because I ignored my intuition for most of my life. So I can go back to that day and feel when he proposed to me and there was a contraction, like a no, a clear no, that I shouldn't have gone down that path. But of course there's karma from I killed him many times in past lives, so there was some karma that I owed him, and there was a battle of wills, in many lifetimes. So there's history there. And it's fun for me to do this past life healing, because then I really see the context of the relationship I have with someone, from a bigger lens, because the relationships that we have with people are not just like you and I here meeting for the first time. Like, we've met before, we've done work before, um, so I would say back then I would probably get those nudges. Like, I would say I saw a healer right before the last time that he hurt me. She put a hands on my womb, and this is when I thought, oh my God, this is so woo woo. I had got like a degree from Berkeley, a master's in public health. I had been very science, logically oriented, in my head for years. So I was in this space where she's like, my massage therapist is like, you got to see this healer. I'm like, okay. She's like, well, put a hand over your, and I was like, well, I'm open to different experiences. She said, go home, put a hand over your womb, and just say, I feel, and allow whatever's going to bubble up, bubble up. And I heard, he's going to hurt me. And my whole body just shook in fear. And I wrote it down, journaled it. And it was like 2 weeks later or something where he really hurt me, and my kids and I fled. So I think, most of my life's feeling those feelings of just like feeling it, but then just immediately denying it, like I would see a car accident before it happened. I would feel like the vibration move out. I don't know if that makes sense. And then I shared it with my ex-husband at the time, and then I witnessed the car accident happen before us. Like, I saw it happen before, or felt it happen before it did. But I was always surrounded by people who were also very scientifically oriented, logically oriented in their heads, and say they would look at me. And so I just didn't, it was suppressed, for most of my life. And so when I had done all the healing work to clear away past life trauma, to clear away things like entities and possessions and energies that were in my field that I picked up from other people, that I didn't realize that was what was causing the anxiety for me. When I did all that healing and I started to have my spiritual awakening, I wrote down things, and I recommend that to everyone when they're trying to develop this muscle of their intuition, and just write things down. And not everyone remembers their dreams, but if you have a dream journal, write them down. I started to do that, and then realized the dreams would come true like within a week, 2 weeks. About something, I write it down and then watch it unfold, so that strengthened my muscle. And then when I started to do readings for people all over the world during the pandemic, I would just know their first name and their question. I didn't want to look at the picture. I didn't want to see the birthday. It's like, I can channel from source about anything. So why don't I just help people? People during the pandemic were pretty freaked out in many ways, right? Finances, health, and being separated from family, and all the things. And that also built up my confidence, because they were all spot on. And I mean, I would see visions in my third eye. I would hear messages for them. I would know their profession without, how would I know that? But we're all connected to that stream of consciousness, to that higher power, whatever word you want to call it. So I think just writing it down, and that built my, confidence, and then doing the readings. And then it's just like I became let's say, unmessable with. I don't know if it's appropriate to cuss on
You
here,
can curse,
but
that's
at a certain
fine.
point, you just like, no, like I trust my channel. I entrust my inner knowing. I know, when people post on social media and they say one thing, I can hear a message that says the opposite. And I'm like, okay, that person's out of integrity. So yeah, it does take practice, but it's like having those ways to build up that muscle, I feel like really helped me.
Those are awesome tools. The writing down the evidence, the dreams, the
Right.
even just the following, practicing those nudges. And I think that's really what the whole healing journey is about, is like slowly but surely trusting your instincts and then seeing the proof in front of you that you were right. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a really beautiful concept. What does it look like to do this work with you? This is your place of mastery. What does it look like when women come and choose to work with you?
Well, first of all, I feel like it's all divinely orchestrated. Like I feel like that's my niche, just the people God sends to me.
Yeah.
It's all been coordinated above me. And so when I work with women and men, mostly women, on all sorts of things. So if they come to me for, let's just say, um, they're trying to get over a past relationship, then it's all over the phone. I've worked with people, like I said, 22 countries. I will hear their story and what's going on with them. And then I actually work primarily off the phone because I just work better that way. So I'm not in their energy and I can really focus and zone in. And for that kind of work, I might look for like vows and contracts and obligations. I will look in their energy field, like we're coming around to this awareness that like people are connected to their past lovers while they're trying to seek out the right partner. That those past lovers are still pulling on their energy in so many ways, right? You know that. And so it's like I love bringing awareness to this, and teaching people like how to cut their cords, or teaching people how to use different energy hygiene tools to keep them from feeling anxious or depressed, or they can't get this person out of their head. So I'll look at their energy field, and most of the time there's past lives that are open, I call them. And I call them past lives, but it's all happening at the same time, right? Past lives, we say that just because it's easier for our human brains to make sense of it. But it's interesting, like this year, I've seen so many people come to me to heal from a breakup, and there's parallel lives going on simultaneously. And that's what brings actually this confusion where they're not able to move on from this person because they're still with that person in another timeline. And don't even think they're intuitive. They feel blocked or their intuition, but subconscious, I'm getting chills right now, but they feel it. They know that they're connected. They might be having a child with this person in another timeline. They might be married to this person in another timeline. That other person might have killed them in another timeline. We're living out all these different plays, all these different roles, right? We change roles. You might, a lot of times, you've been their mother in a past life, and you feel this obligation to take care of them and to be there for them all the time, even though they're like a drug addict and they abuse you or whatever unhealthy pattern they have, right? So it's past life, and it's also subconscious beliefs. And so I will basically go up to or within source, and I hear the subconscious beliefs that are precise to them and their issue. So for a relationship, if they're having trouble moving on, I'll hear they've got 6 beliefs, and I'll hear those specific beliefs and hear a healthier replacement belief. And with the client's permission, we change that. And then it's like they feel clean and clear of the energy. There's no need to like see a counselor for 7 years to try to move on, from this relationship. So yeah, that's kind of how I work. I use emotional, energetic work. I use past life work. If it comes up subconscious, every session is unique to the client and the issue.
That's so exciting. I love that you mentioned parallel lives. As far I know, we use past lives all the time to help people's ego like realize what's going on, but I love that you are in that knowing, because I think it helps so many people when they can make these connections. And just the work you do, I can tell as you're speaking about it, as I see the channel coming through you. And I'm so excited for my community to have access to you and your offerings, because it's so needed. And like you said, and I'm not, I loved and needed for my therapy and EDMR when I was going through the things. And as we step into this new paradigm and we have this new awareness, it's not always as necessary as we used to think it is. It's really about those conscious connections and being able to see the parallel lives, like you were saying, the cords, the attachments, the limiting beliefs that are coming from timelines you're not even currently living in. And for you to be able to guide people into that knowing is just, I'm so excited.
And I don't mean to diss therapy or anything. It's just that we have, as a society, we believe things have to be hard to be
Right.
effective, you know?
Yeah.
And when people come into my world, it's like we change, some like maybe like a dozen beliefs right off the bat so that they're, for example, open to miracles.
Yeah.
Like those we can have access to, so it's going against the grain, right, so to
Yeah. Which
speak.
is the new way, honestly, because we're
Yeah,
trying to break free from that place of I have to suffer for everything.
right, that's another
And
one. Yep.
it's so exciting. And I'm just really grateful. So first, I'm going to have you just share with everyone. They already have your links, so they know, but just if you could just share with everyone how they can work with you, the different ways. And just remember, you guys, from the intro, that below this episode, wherever you're seeing it, you can find all of her links to social media, her website, and the ways to work with her. So tell us all about it.
Well, there's a few different ways. I do intuitive readings. I am also a medium, so I do mediumship readings. Those are lovely. And I do human design readings. Those are the soul activation sessions. And my main offering is the quantum healing sessions and quantum healing containers. And so people want to do just one-off session with me, or an intensive, or the longer 3 and 6 month containers. That's what I have for one-on-one work. And then I've got a sacral response class on my website, as well as an energy hygiene course that I think so many people need in this new world that we're living in.
That's so exciting. You guys check out Rebecca's links below this. Connect with her, check out her stuff. I'm so excited we had you here today. As we wrap up, is there anything you just feel called to share with the listeners here?
I just want to offer hope for anyone who might be struggling and feel like there's not a light at the end of the tunnel. I feel like all of that is just part of the journey. All of that makes you more empowered and more intuitive, and it's quite the journey, but all of the pieces put together make up the whole puzzle, if you will, so it's worth it.
I love that. Thank you. And thank you, Rebecca, for being here today.
Thank
Everybody
you for having me.
listening, I hope you enjoyed this. As always, breathe deep and plan on miracles.